Hey guys! The world is currently under one of the greatest health and economic crises in history. With solid economies that keep issuing money to overcome the crisis, the increase of Bitcoin, and the uncertainty of global financial markets, there's a race between countries to see which will remain among the most powerful in the world. I'm Sofia Amaro, and according to estimates by the International Monetary Fund, based on GDP per capita, these are the 10 richest countries in the world in 2021. Number 10 is Sweden. One of the two most important sectors for the Swedish economy is the industrial, which represents 23% of the GDP and depends greatly on the production of large companies like Electrolux, Volvo, Scania, H&M, Ericsson and IKEA. The other is services, which represent 65% of the GDP, powered by telecommunications and IT services. In spite of being one of the European countries with less restrictive measures during coronavirus, fostering its economy, it also entered into recession due to its main trade partners, the Nordic countries and the European Union in general. Its currency, the Swedish krona, remains strong at an international basis. With a current population of 10.15 million people, its GDP is expected to grow approximately 3.5% in comparison to 2020, reaching $57,660 per citizen. Number 9. The Netherlands. The Dutch economy is based mainly on the services industry, which represents 70% of the national revenue and employs 82% of the country's workforce. This sector focuses mainly on transport, distribution, logistics, banking, insurance, hydraulic engineering, and new technologies. On the other hand, the industrial sector produces nearly 18% of the country's GDP, mainly through the food, metal, and petrochemical industries. Finally, the agricultural sector represents almost 1.6% of it, being the largest flour exporter in the world. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, in 2020, the country's economy decreased in 4.2%, and it's expected to have a slow increase of 2.8% due to the new wave of cases, reaching an estimated GDP per capita of $58,030. Place number 8 goes to Iceland. Its services sector, which represents almost 64% of the GDP and employs 79% of the workforce, is based mainly on software development, biotechnology, and tourism. The agricultural industry contributes with 4.6% of the GDP, with fishing as one of its main sectors, representing near 40% of exports. Finally, the industrial sector represents approximately 19.6% of the GDP and employs 17% of the workforce. Iceland's workforce consists of 215,000 people out of a total population of 365,000, and it's the largest power producer per capita in the world. According to the current IMF forecast for 2021, Iceland will undergo an important recovery of almost 6%, reaching a GDP per capita estimated in $58,370. Number 7. Singapore. With a population of 5.64 million citizens, it's the 7th richest country in the world. The services sector, the most important one for its economy, represents approximately 70% of the GDP and employs 83% of the workforce. It's mainly based on trade, telecommunications, financial services, logistics, and transport, with one of the most prominent and developed ports in the world, as the country is a major node for regional trade. Singapore's economy is highly industrialized. This sector represents approximately 25% of the GDP, employs 16% of the population, and is based on electronics and the petrochemical industry. According to the IMF's most recent projections, the GDP will increase 3% in 2021, reaching $62,110 per inhabitant. Number 6 goes to Denmark. In Denmark, the services sector accounts for 3/4 of the GDP and employs around 78% of the population. On the other hand, the industrial sector, which generates almost 22.5% of the GDP, is one of the world leaders in wind turbine production, exporting 85% of them. The most active sectors are the chemical, pharmaceutical, and biotechnological. Denmark, as well as Sweden, is one of the countries trying to go cashless by 2030. which is why cash has already been banned in some clothing shops, gas stations, and restaurants. With a population of 5.8 million people, by 2021, its GDP is expected to reach $63,640 per inhabitant. Starting top 5 is the United States of America. While it has the largest nominal GDP in the world, America only reaches top 5 on this list, given that it is ranked by GDP per capita, and the USA has a massive population, estimated in 333 million inhabitants. America, whose economy is based mostly around services, which generate 77% of the GDP and employ more than 79.4% of the workforce, is home to big companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. This country is highly industrialized, with excellent productivity levels and use of modern technology, which accounts for 18.2% of the GDP, making the US a world leader in automotive, aerospace, pharmaceutical, and food production. The United States is definitely one of the most affected countries due to coronavirus, which has resulted in its currency suffering devaluation these last couple of months. However, it makes it into top 5 thanks to a GDP per capita estimated in $66,140 for 2021. Number 4. Norway. Like in most post-industrial countries, the services sector is highly developed, employs more than 3/4 of the population, and makes up 57% of the GDP. It also has a strong industrial sector, which employs less than 1/5 of the workforce and represents almost 32% of the GDP. This sector depends greatly on sources of energy and natural resources. However, Norwegians are starting to worry, as it is estimated that oil might start to become scarce within the next 2 decades. As a consequence, they have been saving their budget surplus driven by oil in a government fund, with assets estimated in $1,232 billion at the beginning of 2021. These are invested in more than 9,200 companies in 74 countries, according to the fund's website. With a population of 5.3 million inhabitants, its GDP is expected to reach $76,410 per citizen by 2021. Starting top 3 is Switzerland. Switzerland has one of the most stable, powerful, and modern capitalist economies in the world. The services sector represents almost 72% of its GDP and employs 77% of the active population. Its economy is known for providing fiscal benefits to attract foreign funds, which is why, within the services sector, banking represents 9.1% of the GDP. Tourism, another very important economic activity within services, was the most affected during 2020. On the other hand, the industrial sector, which generates 25% of the GDP, is known internationally for the high quality of its manufactures, including watches, musical instruments, engines, generators, turbines, among others. With a current population of 8.6 million inhabitants, by 2021, its GDP per capita is expected to grow 3.8%, reaching $90,360. Number 2 goes to Ireland. Just like most developed countries, the Republic of Ireland also bases its economy around the services sector, but to a lesser extent. This sector represents 55% of the GDP and employs 75% of the active population. Banking and the financial sector have experienced such growth that Dublin is considered an important international financial center. It also has a modern and developed industrial sector that represents 37% of the GDP, based mostly on the clothing, the chemical, and the electronic industries. Lastly, agriculture represents less than 1% of the GDP, and the most important activities within this sector are meat and dairy production. With almost 5 million inhabitants, its economy is expected to have an increase of 6% in 2021, reaching a GDP per capita of $90,480. And the richest country in the world is Luxembourg. In Luxembourg's economy, the services sector represents almost 79% of the GDP, and more than half of it accounts exclusively for financial and real estate services. Just like Switzerland, this country used to offer fiscal benefits to attract funds, but in the past few years, financial practices standardization measurements have been applied, which concern those related to economy. This has fostered sectors like telecommunications, logistics, e-commerce, and biotechnology. The industrial sector represents only 5% of the GDP and has historically been dominated by the production of iron and steel. Luxembourg has a population estimated in 626,000 people, but its workforce is larger, as more than 190,000 workers cross the borders of France, Belgium, and Germany every day to go to work. According to the IMF, in 2021, its GDP per capita will reach $125,920, making Luxembourg the richest country in the world. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to comment your opinion on this country's richness. That's it for now, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.